So, what is law? I mean, really, it sounds like such a simple question, right? But believe it or not, it sparked some of the most intense debates for centuries. And today, we're diving right into the heart of those debates to figure out the big ideas that actually shape our world. I mean, think about it. Is law just a command from on high? Someone powerful saying, do this or else? Or is it deeper than that? Maybe a reflection of our moral code? Or hey, maybe it's just a tool, like a hammer for building a better society. The truth is, there's no easy answer here. And that's exactly what makes this whole topic so fascinating.
People have written, massive books trying to answer this. Look at this one. It's over 600 pages long, all dedicated to these big legal ideas. But don't you worry, you are not going to have to read a single page of it. We've done the heavy lifting and boiled down the biggest, most important debates for you, right here, in just a few minutes.
Okay, so before we jump into the debates themselves, we need to know what to call this field of study. It has a fancy name, jurisprudence. I know, sounds a little intimidating, but trust me, the idea behind it is actually super simple.
So, what is jurisprudence? Well, you could call it the science of law. But we're not talking about memorizing the speed limit or how to file your taxes. No, this is about asking the big why questions. Like, why do we even have laws in the first place? What gives a law its power? And how does it all connect to what we feel is right and just?
Here's maybe the best way to look at it. Learning law is like learning the rules of a game. You can't do this, you have to do that. But jurisprudence, that's like stepping back from the game and asking, wait a minute, why is this a rule? Who came up with it? And is this even the best way to play? It's about thinking about the rules, not just following them.
And that question, that's what leads us to the main event. See, in the world of jurisprudence, you've got these different schools of thought, kind of like rival teams, each with their own answer to those big questions. And today, we're going to focus on two of the real heavyweights in this intellectual battle.
All right, in this corner, you've got the analytical school, led by a guy named John Austin. Their big idea is simple and direct. Law is a command from the person in charge. And in the other corner, you have the sociological school, with Roscoe as their star player. Their take, totally different. They see law as a tool, something you use to engineer a better society. So yeah, two very different ways of looking at the same thing.
Now, theories can feel a little abstract, right? So to really get a handle on them, let's meet the people who came up with them. Let's get to know the two masterminds at the center of this whole debate. Okay, first up, let's talk about John Austin. You can picture him as the commander. He was writing back in 19th century Britain, when the British Empire was at its peak. So it makes sense that he saw law as this top-down instrument of power. It's all about orders coming from one central authority. His whole theory is just like that. Super direct, powerful, and no messing around.
And if you want to boil his entire philosophy down to one sentence, this is it. Law is the command of a sovereign backed by sanction. That's the whole ballgame for him. It sounds pretty straightforward, but let's unpack it, because it's built on three key ideas.
All right, let's break it down. For Austin, for something to be a real law, it needs three things. First, it has to be a command, a clear order. Do this, don't do that. Simple. Second, it has to come from a sovereign. That's an authority, like a king or a government that everybody else obeys, but that doesn't obey anyone else. They're the final boss. And third, there has to be a sanction, a punishment. A fine, jail time. Something bad happens if you break the command. According to Austin, if you're missing any one of those pieces, then sorry, it's not really law.
Okay, so now let's switch gears completely and meet our other champion, Roscoe. He comes along about a century later, during this really optimistic time in America called the Progressive Era, and his vision couldn't be more different. He wasn't thinking about commanders and orders. No, he saw lawyers and judges as something else entirely, social engineers.
Yeah, for Pound, law wasn't some rigid set of rules from on high. It was a tool, a flexible, practical instrument. And what was its job? To solve society's problems, to actively get in there and build a better, more efficient, more harmonious world.
So, what does this social engineering actually look like in practice? Well, Pound broke it down into 3 steps. Step 1, you have to identify all the different competing interests in society. You've got what individuals want, what the public needs, and what society as a whole is aiming for. Step 2, the legal system's job is to act like a referee and balance all those interests, trying to get maximum satisfaction with minimum conflict. And finally, step 3, you use the law to build the structures that make that balance a reality. So there you have it, the big showdown. For Austin, law is a rigid command. Its power comes from the top, and your job is just to obey it. But for Pound, law is a flexible tool. Its value comes from how well it actually works to solve problems for real people down on the ground.
All right, I know what you might be thinking. This is all very interesting philosophy, but so what? How does this affect my life? And that is a great question, because it turns out these seemingly abstract ideas have a huge, huge impact on the real world.
Seriously, these aren't just dusty old ideas in a book. The way a judge or a lawmaker thinks about the nature of law, whether it's a command or a tool, directly shapes the decisions they make, the laws they write, and the kind of justice you and I experience. The connection is powerful.
Let me give you a concrete example. A judge who's a fan of Austin's command theory, they're probably going to look at a law and apply it to the letter, strictly as it's written, no matter what. But a judge who leans more towards Pound's social engineering idea might look at that exact same law and say, how can I interpret this to get the fairest result for everyone involved? And that difference in philosophy can lead to wildly different outcomes in real cases.
And all of this brings us right up to today, and a really big question for the future. As our world gets more and more complicated with stuff like AI and giant tech platforms, what kind of law do we need? Are we better off with the rigid, top-down certainty of the commander? Or do we need the flexible, problem-solving approach of the social engineer? There's no easy answer, but whatever we choose will literally shape the world we're all about to live in.